we can now see, we can now like run with this game and sort of program with it. So the flyweight pattern, it's to take similar things and then break it out into a specific instance. So do we even have that? Or should I create a completely different example for it? Or maybe just like skip through to the next chapter? Because maybe there's nothing to add in to this game. Or maybe we have to figure out something to add in order to force us to use the flyweight pattern. So we have our main game. Cool, thank you. Let's see, our input handler. We have an obstacle and a player. So let's take a look between obstacle and player. If we look at our constructors here, we have initial location, width, height, and jump force. But each of those are going to be very different. And in the Rust version, it's the same thing. We just have an obstacle that's already being shared between the two instances of it. So that's not really that big of a deal. So I'm thinking we should add something into this game. Maybe, I mean, it could be some kind of like terrain generation where we have like, we could just do trees in the background. And that might be interesting. Trees in the background of different sizes, and they're slowly moving to the left to sort of indicate that we're running through the forest. Or maybe they're quickly moving to the left. I don't know. It could also be mountains that we create. I think I like the idea of trees. And we need to figure out how to draw them. We can also do puffy clouds, because those might be easier to like figure out shapes to do. That's mainly because I'm not familiar with how to import sprites or anything else yet, but that might be a future thing to do. If I do simple trees, with the idea of being a tree is a rectangle with a triangle on top. That could be really simple, and we can have a whole bunch of them and put them down, and we need a lot of them on the screen. So if we do that, then we'll need the flyweight pattern. So let's implement that. So to begin with, we'll create another file here. We're going to call it the tree. So we're going to have a tree class. But knowing that we're going to have a whole bunch of these, I guess like let's figure out what we need in the tree. Because then it's probably we're going to want like the world and to extract things into there for drawing this out. So for our tree, we're going to have, I think in modern times in JavaScript, I can now just say what I want in here. So we can have like let, can I do this, or do I have to do it off of like the constructor? So when we have a tree, we know we're going to want some kind of like location. So this dot location. We're going to have this dot. We're going to want maybe like the size. I am thinking that this is going to be 2D, so it's not going to be like some kind of like three-dimensional where it's going. We're just going to scale it up. We could have different heights and widths based upon that, but maybe the size could just be a scaling factor where we multiply the size. Let's see, what else would we care about? What we'd want the color, probably this dot color. We have, so the location, the size, the color. Our player is running through the game, which means that we're going to want these to be moving to the left. So it's going to be this dot I guess that's going to be our velocity. And I think that's it. So location, size, color, and velocity as we move through. So locations can be different for every single tree. Size is going to be, oh, well, I guess the drawing of it too. Here, it's not as big of a problem because I would have, well, okay, maybe it is a problem. I would have some kind of like a draw function. And the draw function here, this would have to be called for every single tree to draw it out into the screen. It's going to use this, location, size, color, and velocity. We're going to have like the move, so it's like moving. So like move tree. I think maybe run is the best one. Move and Rust has is a protected keyword, so I don't like to use that. It's kind of like fun to have like a tree that has a run method on it, but it's really like changing the location. Maybe update would be better. So we draw it to the screen, we update it, which moves it to the left. So we need to determine if it's off the screen. So is off screen. And if it's off the screen, then that means it'll, like maybe we destroy it and we create a brand new one of different sizes, or maybe we just like reset the tree. So then we have a reset. I think that's like the general idea of what a tree would be for us. Now, if we want to do this with the flyweight pattern, this draw function, because P5.js, we don't necessarily have meshes, or specifically, I'm not uploading any kind of graphics for this. I'm just using very simple shapes. But the draw function here doesn't have to be on every specific tree. This could be on like the world. When we draw the trees, we need to loop through all of the trees. And then we'll call draw. It's going to be the exact same everything, except we just have to multiply the size to like make it the different shape. Updates are going to update all this information, like the location and the velocity together. So those go together. The colors could be sort of like subtly different, shades of green. Is off screen. Each tree is going to be at a different point in time going to be off screen. And then reset. So I think draw is the main one to take off of this flyweight pattern. That being said, it's also possible that I'm overthinking this and that this isn't necessarily a good choice for the flyweight pattern. But maybe let's try it. This is also literally exactly the trees, forests, are what he was talking about in the first example. So we have our tree. What do we need here for this? So we go back to, if we go back to here, we have the mesh. stored in the world. So the world is going to store a, well, in his case, it's the array of arrays. This one could just be an array of the trees. They have terrains, but okay. So it's an array of the trees, essentially. Then we can loop through those trees and then have the world draw them out. So this means I would also need a world. Maybe I could call this arena too. I don't know. Okay, so if I have this class world, they're going to have all the trees we want to draw out. So in constructor, we'd essentially have this dot trees equals, it's an empty array. Then we're going to want to take in the trees. So this is the idea here is we're going to draw these trees out. Do I want to have the trees disappear or just reappear and they get reset? So maybe I have like a pool of them, which I guess that's what he was talking about, is the object pool. Is do I want to implement that or do I want to destroy them and create new ones as soon as they reappear? I don't know. It's a good question. So if I start with, maybe we could do one tree to begin with. So in our array of one tree, we need to instantiate a tree, give it its unique information. Draw won't be on here. We'll have draw in the world. So we'll have something like draw trees. So does the world need to take in trees, or is it going to create the trees for us? Maybe the world should create the trees. Because it's aware of that. And its domain is the world. So we create the trees. We store the trees in here. And then in draw trees, we loop through the trees and draw them to the screen. So if we have one tree to begin with, let's also get these into our index.html, because I'm not doing any kind of modern JavaScript anything here. So script source. This is tree.js. There's world.js. So now in the game, we can now essentially initialize our world, create all of our trees, and maybe hand it to the world. So let's do that. Let's have the trees get handed to the world. So we can do trees here, which means I'm just going to store the trees in this .tree. So we're going to assume that this is an array that's coming in. So in tree, we know that that's coming here. Let's open up game. It's going to be sunny today. So let's create R. So const trees equals we make that into an array. And when we set up the function here, or we set up the game, trees, so I guess we could do, this will be a for loop to create all of the trees, where obviously it's just gonna be a loop of 1 for right now. So for that, we don't really care about this, do we? So let underscore count. Skarsh, hello, which game pattern is this related to? This is the Flyweight pattern. So, okay, let underscore count equals 0, and then underscore count is less than 1. Count plus plus. Do plus equals 1 because that's what we have to do in Rust, and that's familiar to me now. Yes. Hello. How's your day been? My day is going to be getting started pretty soon. Okay, so we should have one tree being created here. Let's now trees.push. We're going to create a new tree. So we can do this new line, new tree. And if we look down at the tree, it's not taking in anything right now. But we're probably going to want to create like the location for like the X and the Y. So if we just say X and a Y is, I don't know, like 50, 50, for X and Y, its velocity, if we set that to be -1 to begin with. Now that's another interesting thing. If the velocities are all the same, they don't go in here. They go in the world. So this dot tree velocity. It's been pretty good studying for exam on Saturday, and writing on your master thesis that's due in less than 2 weeks. Good luck with your master's thesis. And then hopefully you'll be done and free and, you know, able to have fun again. So we don't need to pass in the velocity anymore. Then the size. So if I just say, okay, your scale is 1, and then color. So if we generate like a random color here, I think there's a P5.js color function. I think it's just color. And then that would be RGB. So 0, we'll make it dark green to begin with. And we might want to like randomize that in the future, but we're going to push a new tree in here. So the tree, and you know what? We don't actually need to store this out here, do we? Doesn't need to be a global, because we have the world that's going to store the trees for us. Where's our initializer set up? What we're really going to do is const trees like that. Now, after we create the trees, we're going to now create a new world. So the world needs to be global. This is going to be the world. World equals new world. And we're going to pass in the trees. Okay, so pass in the trees, and then the next thing we want to do is tell the world to draw all the trees. We're not going to have the world update the trees, just draw all the trees. So this is if the game is running. Right, I have this fun state management in here. Okay, so if we're rebinding, so I did it so that it freezes the game in this one, and I realized that just different states, like different screens would be better, but it's not really that big of a difference between what we have in Rust. In Rust, we're just drawing different things, whereas in here, we're drawing everything the same, regardless. And we're not updating it. But so at the very top, so it's behind everything, we can draw the trees. So we can do world dot. I mean, maybe want to draw the trees. Maybe want to draw the I guess the world behind it, right? So world dot draw. And if we now come down to the world, we do need. I guess we could call draw trees directly. So we have our trees. Our tree velocity is going to be equal to a, I need to look up what the P5JS velocity is. Reference, I think it's under math. Create vector, that's what it is. So create vector, the x is going to be essentially -1 and 0 to make it move left. So then in draw trees, we know a tree. How do you draw a tree in P5 again? We just create the rectangles. We just create the rectangles and we just put them in there. So it's going to be something like rect and triangle, I think. And we just say exactly where it is. So rect. Now, was that what he did in Flyweight? No, he created a tree model to store that off. Now, we don't necessarily have that here. Tree model, it holds the mesh, the bark, and the leaves. Then in tree, he passes a reference to that model in, and it draws itself. So this still isn't, this would essentially still be looping through all the trees. So essentially trees dot for each, don't do that. For each, we get a tree, and we're going to tree dot essentially draw to the screen. So in tree, we do need a draw still. And I guess it's not really that big of a deal for here because there's no mesh that we're storing. We're just gonna say, put a rectangle down, put a triangle down. So if I do a rectangle, so what is that? That's rect. Shape, rect. Right, so whatever you try to do, VS Code, don't do that. Okay, so rect, and then it's location, so it's, this will be like this dot. So we know that in the tree, we're creating like an X and a Y and a size and a color. I think that's what we decided, right? X, Y, size, and color, yep. So you are gonna be equals create vector X and a Y. The size is gonna be the size, color. Okay, so for the rect, we're going to do maybe right now, instead of just size like this, we can do width and height. That might make a little bit more sense. So this dot width, this dot height equals height. Up here we'll change it so our width is maybe 5 and our height is maybe 15. So we have our rect. This will be drawn first, so it's behind the triangle that then comes on top of that. So we're gonna have the top left of it. Now this is interesting. If I want the tree to be like and then down, the top left up there, I mean, I guess it could just be an entire square. But then I want the rectangle to be a smaller piece of it. Maybe we're just talking about the trunk's location and then the tree sort of, they can overlap with each other. So maybe we should call this trunk location. So our rect will be this dot trunk location dot x, this dot trunk location dot y. Then the width, so how wide this is, so this dot width. And then the height, so this dot height. And that's it. That draws this rectangle out. I think it's going to draw it as black. And so this is the game is going to draw all the trees. Tell the world to draw all the trees. The world is going to loop through all the trees and tell the tree to draw itself, which then happens. Does this get me a tree? Not exactly. Or if it, is that a tree right there? That might be a tree right there. So we have this function draw trees. Do we have ooh, okay, see this? The clear is in the, if the game is running. I might need to put this after the clear, because otherwise it's disappearing as soon as we hit here. So if I do that, there's our tree. It's always there. We start. Okay, so this is the correct place to put it. It's behind everything else. So we're going to want to make these opaque as well. I think part of the color is setting the alpha. Right, okay, set alpha. Okay, so I can create a new color and then set its red, green, and alpha. And I think it starts off with 0. Okay, so for initializing the new tree, if we do const the color equals p5 dot new p5 dot color, do that up here so it's not inside of the array push. Okay, so once I have that, now I can do color dot set green to be essentially, let's just do another like 150. Make it a little bit lighter. Let's also set the alpha to be maybe like 50, so really, really dim. See-through, very opaque. No, not opaque, opposite of opaque. Now we pass in color instead of this color here. So save that. Of course, we're not using the color when we're drawing here. So when we draw, I think there's a way to set the color. It's under rendering. I don't know how to set the color off the top of my head. Because that creates new color. Color mode. Does fill just take a color? Oh, yes it does. Fill takes a color. Fill, not that. Fill this dot color, which will probably make everything now terrible. Save you. I realize it's after 8:18. I'm gonna have to go after this attempt, regardless of however it goes. So yeah, I think I made everything way too transparent. So if I do that and like do the drawing for the world, that means after this we have to do something like, oh, we have like this fill 0. So that's trying to set the color back to be whatever it is. But then the alpha needs to be like reapplied to everything else. So I would need to figure out what the drawing appropriately is and do that. I don't know it off the top of my head. I don't think I can just do like alpha 1, or I guess 255. Yeah. Do we have an error? Oh, we do have an error. pinst is undefined. Okay, so I have some problem somewhere, probably with like my creating the color or so. Well, I'll need to figure that out at a later time, but unfortunately I'm out of time today. So I am doing these streams every single morning when I don't have anything else coming in. I'm doing them from around 7 a.m. to around 8:15 or so before I head off to work, do my stand-up and everything else.